Now we turn to our first theme, which is urban design, built environment, and technology. I invite our distinguished speakers for this segment to take their seats on the stage. We start with Mr. Aditya Narayan Singh, Director, Ozone Cell, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India, TBC. A round of applause as I welcome sir on stage. Very warm welcome to you, sir. Ms. Priya Narayanan, Senior Program Manager, Cities Program, WRI, India. Another round of applause. Mr. Ashok Lal, Founder, Ashok B. Lal Architects. Very welcome to you, sir. Mini Sastry, Advisor, Extreme Heat and Sustainable Cooling, UNEP. Melanie Slade, Senior Program Manager, International Energy Agency, will be joining us virtually. Mr. Pramod Singh, Senior Director Program, Alliance for Energy Efficient Economy, AEEE. Very warm welcome to you, sir. And now Ms. Prima Madan to facilitate this session.
So access to sustainable and climate-friendly cooling. As it was mentioned before, the session focuses on three themes that we think works in three ways to address this issue. First is, of course, managing and reducing the urban heat island effects. Second is through the built environment, which is also how we reduce the cooling demand through the built environment, both urban and rural, and other focus of the India Cooling Action Plan. And the third aspect is about how do we meet that cooling demand by the most efficient equipment in the market available. So with these three aspects, we wanted to kick off, and I'm going to throw in some facts and figures, which I'm hopeful we can circle back towards the end of the session. As per the International Energy Agency, and we have Melanie from the IEA, as per their energy outlook for India in 2040, the buildings yet to be built and appliances yet to be acquired would drive India's energy demand in the next 2 decades. And the residential energy use will triple by 2040 just by the appliance ownership and need for cooling. So those are huge numbers with implications on even the grid infrastructure, which Pramod will be touching upon later in the session. So our energy use is residential energy use will triple. Now the second is on cities that are heating up. Cities are heating up nearly double the global average. And some of the estimates suggest that by 2100, by the next century, we are talking about a warm-up of nearly 4 degrees centigrade of the cities above the global average. So those are huge numbers. And then access to cooling. So Sustainable Energy for All mentions that nearly 1.12 billion people across 77 countries are at high risk due to lack of access to cooling. So how do we provide access to those people? So when we talk about solutions, so we are looking at solutions to address and work around these facts and figures that are really glaring in our faces. The session, the way it is, we have set this up, is that we will pass it on to each of the speakers to talk about a solution, and then we will have a conversation around how we can focus on implementation. And when we talk about implementation, I will urge all speakers to think about ways of implementation at scale. And how do we also talk to the theme that will come up after this session on impact of some of these solutions, on how these solutions address productivity, workforce heat stress management, as well as also about looking at community engagement. When we talk about implementation at scale, how do we ensure that the communities most vulnerable are not really left out? So that's the context I wanted to start with. And with this, I'm going to invite our first speaker, Mr. Aditya Narayan Singh. Ozone Cell has really been leading the effort on India Cooling Action Plan, and India Cooling Action Plan in many ways has really brought together a lot of us within the government sector, within civil society, across sectors, really to think about cooling in a cohesive way. So it'll be great to hear from you, sir, on the Cooling Action Plan, and how do you think it integrates with the heat challenge? Sure, yeah. So we'll make a presentation so we can put that up. You want to go there?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting Ozone Cell in this forum. And I have prepared one presentation, and my presentation is on implementation of India Cooling Action Plan. And as we know that cooling is linked to human health and productivity in the tropical climate, and cooling demand is expected to grow in the future due to rising income, economic growth and urbanization, and which will result in increased consumption of refrigerants and increased requirement of cooling energy. Next please. To address the cooling, India is the first country in the world to develop a comprehensive cooling action plan. And ICAP provides a long-term integrated vision to address the cooling requirement with a 20 years time horizon. And overarching goal of ICAP is to provide sustainable cooling and thermal comforts for all while securing economic and social co-benefits besides environmental gains for the society. Development of next slide, please. Development of ICAP involve extensive stakeholder interaction with the government message, department, organizations, industry and industrial association, think tanks, R&D and academic institutions. And 7 thematic groups were identified and working groups were constituted to address the cooling. And the thematic groups are space cooling in buildings, air conditioning technologies, cold chain and refrigeration, transport air conditioning, refrigeration and air conditioning servicing sector, refrigerant demand and indigenous production, research and development. And there is a steering committee to guide and oversee the implementation of the ICAP. Next slide, please. And ICAP goals by 2037-38 are a reduction of cooling demands by 20 to 25%, reduction of cooling energy requirement by 25 to 40%, reduction of refrigerant demand by 25% to 30%, training and certification of service technicians, recognition of cooling as a thrust area of research. Next slide, please. This slide shows growth in cooling demands by 2037-38, and sector-wise, if we see, building sector will grow 11 times from 2017 to 2037. Transport sector will increase 5 times. Cold chain sector will increase 4 times. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next. And space cooling is an important segment of the cooling demand, and intervention scenario projects that 20% cooling demand can be reduced by improving building envelopes by adopting energy conservation building code of BE in commercial building as well as the residential building, and 30% cooling demand can be reduced by improving efficiency of the cooling equipment or appliances. And in this case, we have finalized the action plan in the year 2021 by mapping the recommendation of the ICAP with the ongoing scheme and programs of the various departments of the government. And if we see for the passive cooling, we have already the existing framework of ECBC of B. And for active cooling, B has the minimum energy performance standard for refrigeration and room air conditioning. And action initiated are wide adoption of ECBC and ECBCR in various building infrastructure construction scheme of the government, and ECBC also being implemented in the building infrastructure construction project scheme such as affordable housing of Mahua, university building, airport projects, railway station, metro station, hospitals, defense-related buildings, industrial development schemes. Next slide, please. For preserving of perishable food products under the cold chain thematic area, adoption of energy efficiency and low global warming potential cold chain infrastructure is being promoted, and we have mapped the various programs of the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Food Processing, and Ministry of Commerce and Industries. And in this case also BIS has developed standards for the flammable and toxic refrigerants for the cold storage and different IS codes. And B has also promoted refrigeration appliances under the STAR and labeling program. Next slide, please. And refrigeration and air conditioning servicing sector is also important to reduce the leakage of refrigerants from the ACs and the refrigerator, and this may be addressed during the servicing by adopting the good servicing practices by RAC servicing service technicians, and shall lead to reduction in the refrigerant consumption as well as the improvement in the performance of overall efficiency of the equipment. And in this case, Government of India has under HPMP SCFC phase out management plan phase 1 and phase 2, we have basically 28,000 technicians we have trained, and by 2030 we will train additional 25,000 service technicians. Next slide, please. And this is also very important sector, refrigerant demands and indigenous production and research and development to reduce the dependency on the import of the refrigerants. Ozone Cell MIF has collaborated with the 8 IITs for carrying out R&D on low global warming refrigerants, including blends. And CSIR IICT has also developed a laboratory scale process for HFO 1234 Y low GWP alternative technologies. Next slide, please. Transport air conditioning sector, we have finalized the action plan on September 2024 by mapping recommendation of the ICAP with the various program schemes. Here the BE to introduce testing agency like AI for the real world air conditioning on test and promote the green labeling system to drive energy efficiency vehicle under the CAFE standards. And also CPCB has issued guidelines for eco-friendly vehicle scrapping, ensuring proper management of refrigerant gases. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think you've kind of summarized the bouquet of solutions that the ICAP offers to us, and we will go a little deeper in with each of the speakers. Thank you. I'll now invite Priya Narayan, just to talk about how nature-based solutions are being included in the urban design. And I know WRI has been doing a lot of work with the cities. So please, Priya.
Everyone. So I'll jump directly on to the topic. So nature-based solutions focusing on urban design, built environment and technology. And alarming statistics. In India, 1.5 million people have been displaced due to climate change over the last 5 years. Of course, a lot of it is heat as well. And big context, and this is what happened in India in April last year. So close to 94% of the entire country's population was exposed to extreme heat stress almost for 6 hours a day. And some alarming statistics here that talk about labor force and how people, especially in the gig economy and laborers, are exposed to extreme heat. And what are we doing? Because our focus right now has been very short-term, responsive, and very we're just acting on what's happening and really not looking at long-term preparedness. So introducing nature-based solution is one of the means, tools, approaches to really push for long-term preparedness. I think the context-setting speaker before also talked about really long-term preparedness towards heat. So we use a fair bit of evidence, data, and a lot of on-ground interactions with different stakeholders, groups to really push forward, cities and their planning processes to integrate resilience and move towards long-term preparedness across different disasters. Primarily focusing on heat. So, and the big opportunity for all of us is 75% of India's infrastructure, 2050 infrastructure is yet to be built. So, embedding or climate proofing our infrastructure is really a big opportunity for India. And a quick brief on nature-based solutions. So, different definitions across the world, but focusing on economic benefits, ecological integrity, community resilience, social benefits, and livelihoods really are the big pieces. And some of the examples are urban forests, river restoration, water bodies, smaller interventions, and why these smaller interventions become really important. Just explain that to you in a bit. So heat risk, again, narrowing it on heat risk. These are some examples that we've taken from our Mumbai Climate Action Plan. So WRI C40 cities, along with the Mumbai city, put out the Climate Action Plan a couple of years ago. So you would see that Dharavi is 5 degrees hotter, and this is in October, than its neighbor Matunga. And these are like clear evidences. So we're not talking about anything up in the air. These are all clear evidences that we've put down in the Climate Action Plan. And what we've done then is to really prioritize neighborhoods. So identifying vulnerable neighborhoods is the key to really, translate some of the actions or solutions that you're thinking to ground. So doing some spatial vulnerability assessments and then identifying those neighborhoods and the type of intervention they need. And with heat, a lot of, with nature-based solution to address heat, floods, etc., a lot of this could be aggregated impacts. Not necessarily you need to do a big intervention in place. You can have smaller interventions that can then aggregate at the ward level, at the local regional scale. So some of these interventions that we've done is essentially minor tweak of your public space or public space reactivation. So it's both for your social benefits, economic benefits, mental benefits, and as well as a green spaces for your everyday use. And the other thing that we did, and I think somebody in the earlier mentioned about, so this did happen. So Mr. Amitabh Bachchan tweeted about this Greening Mumbai manual, and then everybody started to come to this workshop and understand what are the different scales of greening that can be done in the city. So these are some of the interventions that's been done with the city to bring or embed nature-based solutions in their planning processes. So this manual again is there in the public domain. And just a snapshot of the different types of NBS. And also, this is not just in Mumbai, but Kochi is also moving towards integrating or framing its disaster management plan to more long-term preparedness, embedding nature-based solution, tweaking its design, tweaking its planning processes. So nature-based solution has become like the word nature-based solution is getting embedded in their master plan, the 2041 master plan of Kochi. And this is a snapshot of what we did in Jaipur. So very, in your underutilized liminal spaces in the city, how do you then intervene to have that aggregated impact? How do you modulate the microclimate? And one of the most important thing that's available in India are your institutional campuses. And we did a small intervention in the jail compound in Jaipur. So we had the inmates work around in different parts to do organic farming. So this is at multiple levels, both social, economic, and ecologically very impactful. The other big thing that I just want to highlight today is the heat hazard, heat mitigation strategy put out for Tamil Nadu. So I think Tamil Nadu is the first state, is one of the first states to then identify heat as a disaster or notify heat as a disaster in October 2019. So some snapshots of cooling strategies, design, policy planning principles that's been integrated. So Tamil Nadu has an active heat action network with 40 plus departments at different scales, different levels, providing recommendations and objectives and recommendations for different heat mitigation strategies, and also the solutions and budgeting and financing. I mean, everything is talked about right now. And just a snapshot of the Gazette notification for Tamil Nadu. Thank you very much. Sorry, I had to run.
Thank you, Priya. Appreciated you being on time. I will now move to Mr. Ashok Lal. He's founder of the Ashok Bilal Architects, and so you've deep experience with urban growth, town planning, and how some of heat resilience measures could be included in those aspects. And if you could also touch upon some of the passive building design elements and cool surfaces. Thank you.
I just want to shift focus to what's coming rather than what we are dealing with today. And I think it's very important for us to realize that, as we've all said, urbanization is rife, cities are growing, and by 2050, 50% of our population is going to be living in cities. But the way cities are growing, and this has been established, we've all seen these maps, that we have to attack the causality of urban heat at scale and at specific locations, both. There's a vicious cycle that is driven by urban heat island effect, requiring more cooling to be done. And as you do more cooling, you don't not only emit more GHGs into the atmosphere, you add more heat to the surrounding spaces of the buildings. So you get a vicious cycle. The cause of it all is faulty urban planning and the fact that we have ignored the integration of green-blue infrastructures as an essential component of urban planning. So my big ask is that immediately we should have urban planning regulations, guidelines, urban design guidelines, which require every city master plan to plan for its coming future, apart from taking care of its present, so that this problem doesn't grow but can reduce. So it means reducing the intensity of development, giving more green and blue space within the fabric, intimately within the fabric of the city. It's not about having forests in one corner and something else somewhere else. Okay? And we are seeing at the moment an aggressive trend completely in the opposite direction. We've got to halt that. That's one solution. Second is that we all recognize that very few of us are going to have access to cooling in any case. And so we're going to suffer a great deal because things are heating up. So we have an ambitious program for small homes to be built with the assistance of the state, the Prime Minister's Awas Yojana. I have been advocating for incorporating in the financing structure and the support structure of PMAY 3 or 4 small things that every home that is built must incorporate. A reflective roof, perhaps a little bit of insulation, ensure that your windows are properly shaded and that you get good cross ventilation in the home. Everybody I've talked to, whether it is the engineers or the house builders or the owners or the mistries, understand these principles. This just has to be a simple ask. So huge amounts of self-built homes and small homes that are going to be built under the PMAY schemes, you just got to incorporate the SOP in the process to make sure this happens. The next thing is, and we are working with the state of Tamil Nadu in this direction, is that our great EC, BC, and whatever, the Eco Niwas Samhita are all aimed at top 5% to build space, expensive big projects. But what about the 95%? Nothing there. Our building regulations do not yet incorporate passive design strategies as a simple device where every building that is to be built has to incorporate. And it's not difficult. Any designer, any architect, any urban designer will tell you it's absolutely straightforward. How to shade a window, how to make a reflected roof, how to add a bit of ventilation, roof insulation, and how to increase ventilation through the spaces. These regulations must be implemented in every municipality through central, state, and local directives within the next year. You have to do these three things immediately. That's my message.
Thank you so much, Ashokji. I think targeting those 95% is extremely important, as you said. I will now invite Mini Shastri, advisor UNEP, to take the floor, please. And I know UNEP has been working on nature-based solutions and passive cooling in the region, so your regional perspective would be very helpful. Yeah. There is a PPT to be pulled up, yeah, and you will see a 5-minute mark there, and then another minute later.
Just while the PPT is there, but setting the context again and just reiterating what Ashok Lal sir said, we are trying to deal with heat and heat waves, and in this response we are cooling our built environment, right? And it's a vicious circle. While we are cooling, the evidence is there that we are heating our planet more through anthropogenic heat, through the GHG emissions from the cooling sector. So there is a need to look at sustainable and passive cooling measures so that we can stop this vicious cycle of, heating our planet more while we are cooling our built environment. And yeah, so there are two ways UNEP is looking at. We are looking at national level strategies. We are looking at urban cooling measures and working at cities, but also working at building level on passive cooling strategies, integrating passive measures at building level. Nature for Cooling Solutions is a global program of UNEP, which is going to get started in 2025, later part of 2025, because UNEP has seen that there is science again, knowing that nature can reduce. We have seen in Chennai, for example, through our UHI work, that it has the potential to reduce as much as 7 degrees Celsius outdoor comfort. So we can achieve affordable thermal comfort through nature. So we are going to help cities implement nature, as well as not only just implement, but also do something which is not available right now, is quantifying the cooling reduction benefits from nature. Which is a long process. So post implementation, this will be set up. We have been working in the ASEAN region, Cambodia, Vietnam, and some of the very quickly works that I will show here. So we've been working with, for example, Vietnam at national level to integrate passive in their cooling action plans or heat action plans with cities, again integrating nature as well as passive strategies at building level. And all of this is also based upon heat assessments. We saw the World Bank's report. So we've also been looking at how do you carry these heat assessments, and just a little bit of deep dive into one of the cities, as I was requested to cover the southeast. So this work at urban cooling level was based upon urban heat mapping, which was done by the knowledge partner there. And then based upon the hotspots at city level, there were 3 major strategies, passive strategies at urban level that were looked into. The first was shading. So where there were streets, new infrastructure which had no tree plantation or cover. So based upon the UHI mapping, modeling was carried out and was seen that, tree shaded streets could reduce up to 3 degrees Celsius, the microclimate temperature. Urban ventilation, so Cantho was the city which is, on a riverside, and it was seen that, if the streets of the city are planned for the new areas which are parallel to the prominent wind direction, it would really help get comfort. And the last third, very simple strategy, what we talk about is surface characteristic. So having more shaded, having more green, having more permeable or pervious surfaces would really help. So these are the 3 simple at urban level strategies that were looked at. In India, we have a big India cooling program, and in which there are a lot of deep dive states that we are working with. But just the last, Madurai city I would like to take in India, where again just 2 simple things were done at city level, which was seeing the land use, land cover change, and land surface change, like to map the heat. And we tried to understand in those hotspots what were the characteristics of that urban planning which was causing heat, whether it was traffic or whether it is density of the built environment. And then this work was done with CEPT University, where depending upon the location, simple passive strategies were integrated, whether it is increasing green cover or looking at more sustainable transport, which is zero emission transport, or whether it is looking at passive buildings in hotspots. Yeah. So this is kind of, an overview of our various works at, urban cooling and at building cooling level. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vinny. Yeah. I will now turn to Melanie, who's joined us online. Melanie, we have spoken about nature-based solutions, passive, affect the built design. Now we turn to you for how do we meet this demand that is first reduced, optimized through some of these measures, but what is the role of energy efficiency in mitigating the cooling, related GHG emissions? And any best practices that you want to highlight for us from market transformation and, learnings regarding policy perspective from the regional perspective? Yeah. Over to you, Melanie. Melanie, we can't hear you. Are you unmuted? Oops.
Is that any better? Can you hear me now?
Very, we barely can hear you.
I can try and speak loudly, but that's all
better. It's better now.
It's better, is it? That's the best I can do from this end. Okay?
Yeah.
Shall we try?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, everybody's made amazingly good points, and I think the main point of integrating everybody who works in this area, all of these disciplines, is incredibly important. But from an energy efficiency perspective, we've heard some of these figures already, but we have only 1 in 10 of households having access to air conditioners at the moment, and less than 25% of households having some form of active cooling. So there are many people, of course, who are heat exposed, and they're often people in vulnerable communities, people who don't have the chance to live in, to work inside. So it's estimated, I think somebody may have mentioned this already, that maybe more than half the labour force is employed in heat exposed sectors. So we've talked about agriculture, mining, construction, all of those things. But air conditioner ownership is, of course, growing very rapidly, and that's a good thing because it's saving lives, it's making people more productive, it's making students more able to learn. So we need to promote that access, but do it in a way that doesn't in turn cause us other problems. And at the moment, what's happening is it's causing huge stresses on grids, so it's increasing costs. And there's an inequity in the sense that the people who can afford air conditioning are raising the cost of the power system, because air conditioning is pushing up peak, which is very, very expensive. So we estimate that under current policy conditions, peak electricity demand in India will rise by about 60% by 2030, and about half of that is driven by air conditioning. So this is a real cost. And one of the speakers earlier was asked the question about where the money comes from. Regulating, of course, to try and improve both our building design in terms of location, orientation, materials, and energy efficiency regulations can help there, and they pay back. They pay back because they reduce the costs of operating that building. So the upfront costs need to be covered, but in the end, there's a societal benefit to that. The same with minimum energy performance standards, which India has, But we know from the countries who've had these minimum energy performance standards for 30 years, they've halved the energy consumption of certain devices, including air conditioners, over that period by having very rigorous regulation that's updated on a regular basis. So it's not just okay to have regulation in place or guidelines. Having them mandatory, having them well implemented, and having them regularly updated is incredibly important. And of course, the issue with the grid is I think you'll come to it again later, but we have a situation where India's solar capacity can potentially manage the afternoon peak, but the cooling peak goes into evening, and that's the bit that we kind of need to consider. One of the things that India, of course, uses in abundance is ceiling fans, and if they are energy efficient, they can help reduce active cooling needs by maybe 2 degrees. So you can combine them to improve efficiency as well. So you have, as you talked about, this bouquet of options, and all of them are necessary. But the benefits of energy efficiency are that they can help pay back, they can help pay for some of these things that we need to see done. I think that most things apart from that have been covered. The one thing I would say about the building codes in particular is that we've seen in other countries that having very good declaration systems, labels, say, for buildings, has helped drive the desire to have more efficient buildings. And it's a measure that's relatively easily implemented, because what you're asking for is a declaration, and then the market can decide which buildings they want to occupy. And we've seen in places like Australia, another heat exposed place, that's really driven energy efficiency without the need for public investment. That's a way of driving private investment. And one of the critical issues then that comes with buildings is how they integrate with grids. So as we're building our grids, we need our buildings to be grid integrated so that they can respond to the what's going on outside, the weather patterns, the state of the grid. And so if there are 2 musts, they're making sure that any new air conditioning standards have demand response requirements in them, and any new building codes have the ability for 2-way communication with the grid, and that requires the installation of state-of-the-art energy management systems as well. So you can do that in new buildings, but you can also do it in existing buildings. So if I had 2 asks only, they would be the 2, because they can help drive some of the things that you're looking for, and also pay for some of the things that you're looking for. And I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Melanie. Hope you can stick around with us for a Q&A later. Yep, thank you. I will now turn to Pramod just to talk about the power grid resilience and resource advocacy in the face of extreme heat. And how do we fail-proof some of the disaster management infrastructure, such as the cooling shelters? So both from the resilience perspective and advocacy perspective. Yeah.
First of all, thanks to NRDC for giving us the opportunity to not just co-curate the session, but also to have me in the panel. Honestly, I thought this is a very straightforward answer. There will be wealth of information on ChatGPT. I can look at it. I can find out, the answers to the 2 questions that you have posed. But my experience, the response were too generic. So in the next 4 minutes, I will try to speak my mind on broadly 2 things: understanding the problem and maybe what can feature in the matrix of solutions. Now, problem looks straightforward: increased heat leading to more cooling requirement leading to more electricity requirement, more power plants, So straightforward approach will be you do an integrated resource planning, you plan for how many power plants, where those power plants are going to come from, and you meet that electricity requirement. Sounds simple? Well, there are a lot of blind spots in this approach. If we start looking at what impact extreme heat will create for this infrastructure. Number one, because of increased heat, the power system itself, generation plants, transmission lines, distribution systems, all of that are going to experience physical damage. Second, as a country, we are trying to achieve 500 gigawatt renewable, which will be roughly 30% of our generation mix as per the CEA's estimate. What will happen to hydropower plants, wind power plants, solar power plants because of extreme heat? The forecast that we are making today for the resource availability, the generation that is going to come up, all of that are going to go for a toss. Well, the bad news is high temperature is not good for solar power plants. As temperature increase, the generation is going to reduce. Wind patterns are going to change because of extreme heat. The hydropower plants, the reservoir capacity, the precipitation patterns, all of that are going to change. So the problem is not as simple as it sounds, number one. Number two, because of disruption in the power system, the impact it will have on the services. If we are planning for, let's say, air conditioners, or we are planning for cooling shelters, how those services are going to be met. We take the simple example of EV charging system. What will happen to all those outdoor EV charging stations because of extreme heat? The cables are going to melt. So it's not only a question of creating energy insufficiency, sometimes it can also pose safety risk. Again, the intuitive approach will be you add more capacity, you add more design margins, you make the materials heat resistance, and this can be solved. Can we afford it as a country? That's one thing we have to think about. The second thing, to what extent we can expect the unexpected and plan for it? Where is the limit? So planners came up with this new approach. Let's add additional R to IRP, make it an integrated, resilient resource planning. How do you factor for all of these externalities in the planning process itself? Now, there is a science behind it. Again, there are plenty of solutions that will come out of it. Today, I'm going to focus on just three things. Number one, enhancing power sector resilience can't be achieved by focusing only on supply side solution. We have to also make our demand into the equation. The best form of energy is the energy that can be avoided through energy efficiency. Make it important in your planning process. The second part, technology alone cannot solve this problem. It also requires a behavioral change. Jan Chetna ko jagana padega hame. How? Now, whenever we talk about power, we say, okay, this is the load which is going to come to the system. Load is synonym to burden. We always say there is a load, let us plan our capacity to meet that load. What we are ignoring that the load can also become a very good solution, and it will provide abundance of solution. As a country, if we are selling 1 crore AC every year, what can we do to make that air conditioner flexible? It can respond to whenever the grid is in need for it. That's the second part. The third part is looking at one solution which has not been explored a lot in India, which is district cooling system. How do we plan for centralized cooling infrastructure? It gives efficiency, it helps in peak demand management, it addresses the issue of urban heat island impact, and it makes the entire cooling infrastructure climate resilient. There are underground tunnels that will deliver the chilled water to end customers. Those tunnels can also be used for cabling purpose, so it can also help to make the distribution system climate resilient. Those are the solutions I would like to leave today with the audience for more thinking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pramod. Very well put together. I have some questions, but you and I can talk separately. I wanted to open up for the audience, but yeah, especially your point that you mentioned technology alone cannot solve the challenge. We have to look at behavioral change to even protect the infrastructure that we're dealing with and for it to do the service it needs to do for us. So we are now going to make this interactive. I had a follow-on question for all of you, but let's open this up. And if there are no questions, then I will ask my follow-on question. But we have a Menti quiz. If you could scan this code that you see on the screen, there is a question, and I can say that question as well. And if you can put in your choice, and based on that poll, there might be a winner solution, and the panel can then a little bit reflect on that winner solution. We are getting there. So the question is, which of the following would you prioritize the most in the countries in the southern part of the world, considering capacity and resource constraint? The first option is the passive building design. Second, cool roofs and reflective surfaces, cooling shelters and green public spaces, energy efficient cooling appliances, and slum rehabilitation and housing upgrades. We need some more responses coming in, please. There's certainly more people in the room than the responses on the screen. If you haven't figured out yet, but you can scan this at the back of your badges as well. The Menti quiz. We'll just give it 30 seconds more, and then we will move to the discussion. All right. Oh, I thought there was a different winner before. Now it's changing. Great. So we have quite a few reflections now. So it seems that the passive building design and the slum rehabilitation and the housing upgrades is what people feel are the most critical, given the resource constraint that countries like India are dealing with. So any reflections, especially from the passive building design perspective? Ashok sir, if you spoke about this and you highlighted some, you said that there could be these top 3 or 4 things that need to be included. If I can turn to you to further build on your thoughts, to address the preference that has been shown by the audience towards the solution.
Yeah, just to highlight this issue of passive designs and to explain the central strategic value of this. It's the first no-cost or practically no-cost action that anybody can take when doing a new building. The cost that might be incurred might be a bit of insulation on the roof. Nothing else is extra cost. Nothing else is extra cost. And if you take it as 100 rupees a square foot on the roof as additional insulation, if you like, that includes also reflective surface, divided by 4 stories building height is 25 rupees a square foot extra cost. It's no cost. Very doable. What it does is twofold. One is absolutely ensures that you are out of extreme heat stress. You're protected. And also for most of the year, it puts the inside of the buildings close to what we call adaptive comfort, close to that. When you're close to adaptive comfort, your shooting demand for air conditioning certainly goes down because you don't need air conditioning for that duration, nor do you need that extent or that power of air conditioning because your spaces are already more comfortable. I did also talk about, and I think my colleagues also here talked about the idea of external, green-blue infrastructure and what to do at the city level. Because of the density of our cities, and because many of us are going to have to live in small homes with half of us being children, we need a habitable outdoors. We need a habitable outdoors. All city planning, all urban design, all building plan projects must have regulation about habitable outdoors. It's not only about putting green trees, but just making habitable outdoors. I would also say that irrespective of whether you are eligible to attract ECBC or ENS, any building that comes for approval, if it is going to go for air conditioning, it has to incorporate a higher specification of passive cooling, more insulation, better windows, absolute shading. You can't get out without that. In Switzerland, do you know, in residences, you're not permitted to install air conditioners. In commercial buildings, you have to prove that you've tried every single passive strategy possible and you can't get the cooling required or you can't get the temperature required. Only then are you permitted to use air conditioners. So this regulation, I would say, is not complicated and it should be instituted as early as possible.
Something to add on. So passive building design is the right choice also because during heat waves and during power breakout situations, power failures, if buildings have passive design integrated, we would still be in a comfortable situation rather than depending on, cooling air conditioners. Also, it's so important, as he talked about outdoor as well as indoor passive. So definitely, yes, at urban level, the guidelines need to integrate passive cooling, and every building actually in India should have basic passive design strategies like shading, integrated, and which is only possible if every city's building bylaw has some basic passive strategies integrated.
Absolutely. My follow-on to that would be, and I'm going to open up this, is what are the barriers? Do the architects don't understand? Is it the regulations? Or is it the consumer?
Only one barrier. The governmental departments and the engineers in the governmental departments are too lazy. They don't want to get down to it. And they think it's too complicated. They need a little bit of education to realize it's not complicated. And, there's one thing I want to contribute here. It's about time that instead of talking amongst ourselves, we create public pressure from the public to say, these are the factors in our buildings that we deserve, we demand, and at no extra cost. You better give it. It's an election issue now.
And some of these things are very traditional in nature. Like in India, the buildings that were built earlier on probably address some of these characteristics far more than what we are building today. So it's not something new, right? If you think about it.
No, it's common sense. You talk to anybody, they'll tell you it's common sense. But, we have, since buildings, commercial as well as residential buildings, have now become commodities, they are sold like toothpaste for their apparent value rather than their actual health and wellness providing value. I think we've got to attack that frontally and get these salespeople into this hall and tell them that they have to change their sales pitch to look at the occupant and their well-being first and sell that as an idea.
This was absolutely, we can go on with this, and I'm itching to address the second runner here, which is the slum rehabilitation and the housing upgrades solution, or the aspect that everyone thinks is important, which will also links directly to the next two themes that are coming up. But I will open up. I've been saying I will open up, and I haven't opened up the session. So please, questions for our panel. Can we please pass the mics around?
Yes, my basic question is that we are not using innovative materials, for example, timber, bamboo, bioplastics, etc. We use the same concrete, standard steel, etc., which is a lot more carbon intensive. So how can we innovate on these materials which are a lot more lightweight and a lot more, nature friendly? And my second question is that we are also not building cycle lanes, etc., which are like in Europe, etc., which basically can, enable in lot more mobility for individuals without emitting, without using these energy fossil fuel guzzling mobility, vehicles, etc. So my on these two questions on materials and on cycling, etc. Thanks.
Sure, maybe we'll take a couple of questions and then we can have the panel turn to it. Maybe we can have another question. Please.
My question is for Ashok sir. So when you talked about the passive designs being incorporated in the buildings today, and it should be, when we do air conditioning projects across the country, we find one thing really different from what we advocate. I don't know why buildings in our country are completely coming as glass buildings nowadays. See, we are a tropical country. The more glass buildings that we make, the more heat that we generate inside the buildings, the more cooling that you need inside the buildings. Of course, it's good for my business, but then not overall. So I just want to ask you whether this is the right approach, making glass buildings as part of the modern infrastructure, or should the approach be totally different?
Thank you. One more question and then we'll get to answer. Okay, we have that.
I would be
So
highlighting on the
come to you.
housing upgrades part. So, sir already mentioned that about like reflective coatings and all those things which require minimal cost. But apart from that, if we are looking at housing upgrades, not necessarily just in the slum portions, but throughout the urban fabric, what other things would you share insights on, or what other things do you think across like diverse things that can be accommodated or pursued in this dimension? If we talk about housing upgrades, or let's say build structure upgrades as total.
Thank you. Maybe we'll answer these and then we can turn to some more questions. I know that we have just a minute left, but maybe sir or any, if you want to touch upon the materials aspects.
Yeah, why can't we use less carbon intensive materials? That was the question, right? Why aren't we doing that? I think there is a movement in that direction. The use of fly ash block and even designing of building structures so that they become less carbon intensive, and that means, let me give you a quick example. A 4 or 5 story high residential building, if designed well, even for earthquake zone 4, can be designed at 2.6 kilograms per square foot of building area. A 10-story building, residential building, earthquake zone 4, will require 6.5 kgs of steel per square meter or per square foot of built up area. So choosing to build higher and higher is asking for more concrete and more steel and more energy intensive materials. So maybe not, and of course as you choose to build higher and higher and you build many of these buildings next to one another, you cause urban heat island also. Nevertheless, there are many other infill materials for walling. I think cement stabilized block, now we're getting something called agrocrete, which can become a commercially viable material very soon, and fly ash blocks, and also the AAC block. Now these together can actually reduce the carbon footprint of infill materials when you replace them, when you replace concrete, in situ reinforced concrete walls, concrete block work, and burn brick with these materials. I think there's a lot happening in that direction. When it comes to doors and windows, this is a long-term plan. We have to invest once again in timber-based products for doors and windows and frames and so on, rather than become dependent on PVC and aluminium, which are extremely high carbon intense materials. So that's on materials basically. Reduce the area of glass straight away. If you reduce the area of glass in a building, you can have high performance glass and high performance windows, protecting the inside much better from the outside.
Thank you, sir. Priya, you want to add to that and maybe then turn to Pramod? Yeah.
Yeah, build structure, households, etc. So I think one big thing that we are observing is also the behavioral shift that is required. And in our heads, somehow a glass building is more, I don't know, say beautiful or nicer or whatever, better. So somehow a large systemic shift needs to happen, and some of these traditional practices and traditional knowledge that's there, it's slowly coming up, but it's very siloed. So it's this larger vision of when we look at prosperity and economy, it's just something bigger, and we're falling in that trap. And that's why I kind of iterated that, we still have a lot of infrastructure to be built, and there is this big opportunity where we can embed hybrid infrastructure, blue, green, grey, and grey is non-negotiable, of course. But then how do you embed blue and green along with it and your traditional practices? That's kind of the highlight for any upgrade that we want to do, and also to build newer space for everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you. And my question will remain how? Sir answered before that we should expand the community that we are right now in this room to include others, to get an answer on how do we actually implement all of this. But Pramod, I will turn to you if you want to address any of the questions on materials, glass buildings, and what beyond coatings are we looking at in the House of Grids?
Instead of talking about materials, I will say whatever solutions we look at, they need to satisfy 3 filters. They have to be functionally sufficient, so which means give the desired impact. They have to be durable with respect to the life performance, and then they have to be cost effective. So it's like saying aaj wahi team jeetegi jo acha khelegi. So that solution will win, which will satisfy all of this.
Great, thank you. I'm going to take 2 questions, but from the back of the room. Sorry, sir. If there are no questions in the back, I'll come to the front. Okay.
Hi.
Now everybody will run to the back of the room, is it? Do you have a question there? Okay. Can you get the mic to the gentleman there, please?
Is there any technology developing which can control the waves and can bring some, cold effect in the coming years, which can be beneficial for the humans? Now, this is a hypothetical question because we are developing 4G, and we are developing a huge quantity of other waves also. So is there any possibility of the weather being, changed or can be controlled as it is done in China to some extent?
Yeah, Minnie, do you want to take that? Yeah.
So, I hope I've understood your question rightly. You're talking about heat waves, that, is there a way to kind of control? So from UN side, we feel it's the nature. So, if we have the right urban forests, if we have the right urban heat sinks, we can prevent and stop getting into urban heat, as well as controlling the heat waves. So it's the nature which has the power. If we can bring back nature to our cities, it is possible. If I answer you.
Hi, okay. Am I audible? Okay. Hi, I'm Ramnik from Habitat India. My question is to the panel in terms of data centers. So AI will be a huge force, as we are saying. So India will be a key driver in terms of data centers. In fact, already AI, blockchain, and data centers are using electricity as good as countries. So how do we look at the impact of AI on built environment? Second is, how do we look at scaling technologies? So there are already startups who are working on technologies. based on AI for built environments, commercial spaces, linking HVACs to BMS and IoT of things. Already startups are scaling things. So how is it that we can use technology and it becomes mainstream in terms of building design? Because all these things need to be preempted. Thanks.
I think, Pramod, do you want to take the question on the data centers?
So data centers, of course, the demand is expected to grow. But a trend that is emerging, earlier data centers, majority of the electricity requirement was to address the space cooling requirement, because the chips will generate heat and that has to be cooled. Going forward, instead of cooling the entire space, there is a liquid cooling based technology which people are exploring. So that will address the heat issue at the source itself, and the cooling requirement of data centers will come down. That's a trend emerging. If you look at what was used to be the power usage effectiveness of data centers 10-15 years back, it was a factor of 2.53. Now it has already come down to somewhere in the vicinity of 1.2, 1.3. So there is efficiency improvement happening. Certainly it's going to be a very big demand area, but there are also developments happening both on the chip technology itself as well as the cooling technology, which is going to address this. And of course, the whole aspect of the resource circularity, how data centers can start using treated water, whether there will be a localized generation, something like a microgrid that will service the cooling requirements. All of those solutions are getting increasingly integrated.
Also quickly respond. So we are using also AI for urban cooling in terms of satellite data of urban heat maps which are made to quickly understand which are the prioritized areas and integrate it into heat action plans. Going forward, we are also going to have AI like we have Google Maps, right? We understand where is traffic congestion. So during heat waves, we should know what are the hot pockets. So having live monitoring of temperatures is way forward, that we are looking at.
Thank you, Minnie. I know there is a question here, so
Hello.
if you want to.
Hello.
Okay.
So I have a question for Pramod sir. You were speaking about district cooling. So we know there's a district cooling plant. I recently got an opportunity to visit it. It's in Gandhinagar. So it is for the town is upcoming and the city is totally pre-planned. But if we want to now implement district cooling to already existing townships or buildings, how that can be done?
The question is more on how do you include district cooling system within the existing.
So that's always going to be tricky. How do you plan district cooling in brownfield or already operational projects? If you see around the country, most of the existing projects are also undergoing massive redevelopment. You see in Delhi, there are various pockets which are undergoing redevelopment. The question as a policy maker, as a implementer, we should be asking, are we missing out on these opportunities which are already ripe? So if you see, there are many buildings which after spending a life of 20-30 years go for a natural upgrade. That is the right time to intervene and see whether number one, district cooling is possible or not, and then if possible, adopt for it.
Thank you so much, Pramod. We have a question here on the
Thanks,
right.
Prima. Thanks. My name is Amit Khare. I'm from Sequoia Climate Foundation. First of all, congratulations to NRDC for this very well designed session, and congratulations to all the panelists for engaging this audience with your remarks and thoughts. My question, actually, I'm driving my question from a discussion that I had yesterday in another event, and there, folks who designed UPI, they pointed out that we should be looking at solutions that are scalable, right? We should not be thinking about things that work and then you scale up. You should be thinking about things that could work at scale, right? It's a different way of looking at things. So with that in mind, my question especially to Pramod and Mel on demand side, because that's the area that I understand more. Can you identify some solutions that could work at scale for cooling? Thank you.
one solution that comes on top of my mind is, if we look at the room air conditioners, which I mentioned are being sold like lakhs, 1 crore last year statistics. How do we modify these standards and include, let's say, grid responsive capabilities there? If we look at last year's sales data, already in India, there are so many air conditioners sold with Wi-Fi enabled capabilities. People are using it for whatever convenience or having that smart feature. If we try and address that segment first and bring it as part of the solution, I think we can achieve the scale. And then perhaps cost-wise also, it's not going to be difficult if the Bureau of Indian Standards or Bureau of Energy Efficiency can make it mandatory for all new air conditioners going forward. Once those assets are in place, developing use cases around it is going to be much easier. Whether you force on customers. So the question, I think, as a country we are going to face, is it okay for some segment of people to experience little bit of discomfort during the periods of emergency, or we want to have complete interruption for all? So that is the question people will face. It's a behavior issue. I think asset-wise or technology-wise, it's doable.
Thank you, Pramod. I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I'm on the stage and have control over the mic to ask a question to Aditya sir. If, when we talk about scale and implementation, ICAP again comes to prominence again. So anything you want to highlight for the implementation of the recommendations that ICAP has, short, medium and long term, for the space cooling sector, how it has progressed since 2019?
Thank you. MOFCC has a steering committee to review the progress of the implementation of the ICAP. And in context of space cooling, we have basically divided into two parts: passive cooling and active cooling. And for the passive cooling, we have identified the framework ECBC, Energy Conservation Building Code, which is the existing code and which talks about how to adopt the passive cooling in the commercial building, as well as they have also come out with the residential building. And as a regulator for the big project, MOFCC also for the big project, EC is mandatory for more than 20,000 square meter. So in that case, we have incorporated ECBC mandatory, and in such project, they are asked to comply with the ECBC norms. They have to adopt the bylaws, everything, and it is being monitored also by the regional office. So this is the one part. And second part of the active cooling, B is promoting a star leveling program, and they are also upgrading MEPS regularly, and they are implementing this and also monitoring. And for such, in the case of DCS district cooling system, actually we have awarded one project to the NIT Rourkela, and they are conducting a study, and they will come out with the findings, and then we will discuss with the stakeholders, and we will see that how it will be implemented. And by this we are implementing.
Thank you so much, sir. I think ECBC, something that the Bureau had brought about in 2007, one of the most low-hanging fruits to just get to implementation and derive the benefits of an energy efficient building, something that NRDC has been focusing on since several years in states. So thank you for highlighting that. Melanie, we haven't forgotten about you. That's the drawback of joining online. But you are very much with us. But I have a question, for you. We turn to the IEA and of course the excellent numbers and analysis that IEA puts across, for all of us in the sector to turn to. So the question is more, what's the role of data that you see? And someone else at the panel before made, I think it was Mini who made that comment on quantifying some of the benefits of nature-based solutions and passive cooling measures. So what do you think is the role of data in this whole conversation?
Thank you for the question. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. It's a little faint, but we can hear you.
Okay, I've changed microphones in case it was better, but never mind. Okay, so maybe I can, on the data point, of course, everybody, there's that old adage of you can't control what you can't measure. We need, of course, to have good data to prove cases, to convince all sectors of society, but governments in particular, that they can implement aggressive, very ambitious policies without badly affecting business and consumers, because that's always government concern. But we would argue at the moment that with energy efficiency, with buildings and appliances in particular, we have good enough data to show that you can do these things and that government can be ambitious. The areas of data and analysis that we're trying to explore at the moment more are other benefits of energy efficiency, so benefits to the economy in terms of jobs and skills, in terms of health benefits, productivity benefits, because we're finding the straight cost benefit argument isn't convincing all governments that they can be more ambitious. So that's where we're focusing on these what we refer to as the multiple benefits of energy efficiency, and in particular those that put people and people's lives at the centre of the debate, because of course it's government's role to look after kind of social and economic development. So that's where we're exploring better data sources. But if it comes to the technical issues, and I just pick up on a point that somebody mentioned earlier about innovation. Innovation's a great thing, but we sometimes use it to hide behind. We have what we need in terms of technology to improve the efficiency of our buildings and appliances to the degree we need to achieve low carbon outcomes. We just need to deploy them, and as you say, at scale. But we have them, and we kind of have no time. People talk about the regulations that were developed 15 years ago, but they have to be applied well, and they have to be applied now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Melanie. I think highlighting the core benefits, skills, health, productivity, extremely important as we talk to some of these issues. With this, I'm going to close the panel. I've made life tough for the following panels to follow, but going really over time. But I hope we can catch up. Thank you so much to all our esteemed panelists. This was an excellent discussion. We have got some key points, and we look forward to continuing this conversation with all of you. Thank you.